let's bring in Tom Brady, Super Bowl champion for the 7th time. And Tom, you're also Super Bowl MVP, presented by Verizon. Congratulations. As part of its $10 million commitment, Verizon is donating a $1 million check.
Tom Brady, Tom Brady, Tom Brady. Hey everybody, how you doing? Did you enjoy the Super Bowl? I sure did, because I'm a big Brady fan. How about them Patriots, right? Them former Patriots. Even though I'm not a Buccaneers fan, I can totally sympathize with them for, winning their first Super Bowl. And so that must be an amazing achievement if you're from Tampa Bay. I don't know why I'm talking about the Super Bowl, because it's no longer relevant, but it's something still in my mind. So I just felt I had to introduce this video with the Super Bowl. From now on, I'll try to do more relevant stuff, as, like if I'm going to do political stuff, I have to do something regarding a news event the day it happens, rather than 3 days or 5 days or a week later. What's the point if Biden launches a nuke somewhere and I cover it, but I'm a week late? What's still relevant is the hate for Trump, and also the hate you get for supporting Trump. For some reason, the media can't just forgive and forget. They can't just move on and find something else to bash. If you just type Trump on Google, you'll find that there's still like 5 results at least, minimum, that talk about how hateful he is, what a Nazi he is, one-sided hateful journalism. There's nothing positive to see on Google about Trump. And that's a sad thing about Google having a left-wing bias. Like it's the #1 used search engine, and yet you can't see, both sides of the story. That's just so sad. But anyways, as time goes on, we're going to see less of Trump. I thought I would talk about 6 of Trump's best policies or achievements. And before I tell you what I think Trump's best policies and achievements are, I would just like to request that you like the video and you subscribe, because we need to beat the YouTube algorithm, which doesn't allow political videos to be advertised. So it's really hard for me to get a better reach and expand my following. So I'd really appreciate if you enjoy this content, just hit the like button and also hit the subscribe button. That would mean a lot. I'm going to start off with number 6. And although I'm ranking them from like lowest to most significant, it's not necessarily an objective measure of how significant the policy was. But towards the end, there's going to be a little bit of, preference towards the policy. So number 6, surprisingly, is Trump's response to the coronavirus pandemic. The reason why I chose this as one of his best, accomplishments is because of the travel ban that Trump imposed on anyone returning from China or Europe back to the US way back in March. At the time, Democrats were saying, oh, let's not call it the Chinese virus. They were focusing on bullshit issues such as those. And I believe Nancy Pelosi was even saying, oh yeah, come to Chinatown. Yeah, it's the best place on earth.
Everything is fine here.
Everything's fine here.
Trump was right in calling it the Chinese virus, because that's actually its place of origin. Yet Democrats would rather focus on not hurting anybody's feelings, when, it's important to stress the origin of the virus itself. And not only that, Trump supplied millions of PPE equipment. He also launched Operation Warp Speed, which resulted in 2 working vaccines with 95% efficiency. Number 5 would have to be the fact that he kept his promises regarding trade. This resulted in the withdrawal from the TPP agreement, which would have been disastrous because China was not an official member of it, so it wouldn't have improved trade across the Pacific. It would have been just another NAFTA and an overall disaster. He also ended NAFTA and created the US-Mexico-Canada agreement. It's supposed to stir up over $68 billion in economic activity and create 500,000 new jobs over the next 10 years. So whether that happens or not, we'll have to see, but it seems to be more efficient than NAFTA. That's all I can say on that. Also, he settled an agreement with the EU regarding outdated trade practices, and it's supposed to increase exports by 180%. In spite of the trade war he launched with China, he still managed to sell them $200 billion worth of exports. And finally, he improved trade relations with Japan and Korea, and he also made sure that exports to Japan would be duty-free from now on. Number 4, although I would have to argue it's probably one of his most significant achievements, and probably one of the most significant achievements of any president that's ever been, is the reversal on the policy of critical race theory. What is critical race theory, you may ask? Well, it's a movement that started in the 80s as an offshoot of critical theory, which originated from Weimar Republic era Germany, from the Frankfurt School. And basically, the Frankfurt School is responsible for most liberal arts curricula nowadays because it basically encouraged Marxism, and basically it spread to most liberal arts schools throughout America, and it's something you will see in like UC Berkeley, for instance. It's very Marxist in its operations, although it seems to challenge power structures and it questions authority. So its aims can be seen as benevolent. Why is critical race theory bad? Because it concludes that all white people somehow benefit from racism, that legal systems perpetuate racism, and that basically it ignores all other kinds of racism that go on in the world, including, black on white racism, Indian on black racism, and vice versa. It's basically saying that, minorities can't be racist just because they're oppressed. So therefore, they're exonerated from any crimes that they can commit. And basically, it's okay to beat up white people because it's, you're fighting your oppressors. You can justify a lot of bullshit like that.
Overnight, all-out brawls outside the Trump rally in San Jose, California. Trump supporters harassed, beaten, and bloodied by mobs of protesters.
They were spitting on me and stuff.
This man says he was sucker punched, his clothes torn off his back.
7 more people just come in, start punching me. I look pretty bad.
And so on September 22nd, 2020, Trump launched Order 13590, something like that. And it ended diversity training and critical race theory being taught across schools. I think it takes a lot of balls for any president to do that, because if George Bush was still president, or somehow he could have, gotten a third term after Obama, I don't think he would have had the gall to do that. Kudos to Trump. And number 3 would have to be Trump's foreign policy achievements. So let's start out with North Korea. Trump was the first president to actually visit North Korea and then cross the DMZ, all the while maintaining sanctions and a focus on denuclearization. And secondly, his work with Israel is something we have to note, because there were quite a lot of peace agreements that Trump was responsible for, and I think it was a historic number of them as well. Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He was responsible for getting Sudan, Bahrain, and the UAE to sign peace agreements with Israel. In addition to those 3 countries, he negotiated the normalization of relations between Kosovo, Morocco, and Israel. With Trump's vision for peace plan, it marked the first time Israel actually agreed to an overall map and a 2-state solution for both Palestine and Israel. And that's probably the most historic peace agreement in modern history. I don't think there's ever been so much progress with Israel in just 4 years. The question is whether Biden will or already has backed out of the stance, and I'll definitely do a video on that. So that's going to be a topic for the next video. Also regarding South America, he cut off ties with Cuba and Venezuela, all the while imposing sanctions on Nicaragua. And why is that important?
We're in the Cuban supermarket Panamerican. I'm gonna make a video showing what they have. Here's a bunch of shampoos, soaps. Here starts the food.
discharge the food.
Number 2 would have to be Trump's tackling of illegal immigration. He ended the practice of catch and release, which was basically a way for, ICE to capture illegal aliens, and then they would get a court date, but then they would never appear for their court date. So it was probably one of the most inefficient practices put in place by the US government, and so it's good that someone ended it. He also built about 400 miles of the wall before Congress cut off funding. And where the wall was built, illegal crossings plummeted by 87%. And I have to admit, I think it's probably not one of his strongest accomplishments, because Trump wanted to deport, basically all illegal immigrants. And as would I think that would have been a great thing for him to accomplish, because if someone crosses over the border and they overstay the amount of time that they're allowed to stay, then they're committing crime. So they need to pay the price, and that is deportation. Whereas ironically, Obama actually deported well over 3 million illegal immigrants compared to Trump's just over 1 million. And finally, numero uno, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That is what I believe is Trump's best accomplishment, because as someone who is a libertarian, I want to see taxes reduced by a lot, because I believe every single individual in the world prospers from low taxes and the added savings bonus. It's just something that eliminates poverty. I believe Trump's tax cut is one of the largest in U.S. history, if not the largest in history. In 2017, the U.S. had the third highest corporate tax rate in the world, and it was at a whopping 38.9%. Only, I believe it was Comoros or UAE that had higher corporate tax rates than the US. The Tax Cut and Jobs Act reduced the tax rate from 38.9% to a flat rate of 21%. The Tax Cut and Jobs Act also lowered income tax for the lower income and higher income tax brackets. So basically the lower class and upper class people benefit from a decrease in taxes. Finally, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act also increased benefits for married couples. So if you're planning to get married, or you're already married, then you could benefit from an increased tax allowance per income bracket, which means basically you get taxed less. So that wraps up 6 of Trump's best policies and achievements. However, before I conclude the video, I would just like to point out a few honorable mentions that I was thinking about putting on this list. They would have to be red tape cuts, which includes the reduction of the approval process for large infrastructure projects from 10 years to just 2 years, which is overall an improvement for the economy. We don't need so much bureaucracy controlling what we can or cannot build, and at least we should reduce the amount of time. Also, another one is expanding the military, and that's just one I'm kind of at odds with, because the Republican in me would say that it's good to improve the size of the military and the strength of the military. However, the libertarian in me is saying that if we increase military expenditure, then we suffer from a greater risk of increasing our national debt, which is a tragedy, to be honest. And also, I would like to mention the withdrawal from the Iran deal, which was a horrendous deal put into place by Obama, and it basically appeased Iran, and it's something we definitely shouldn't do, as Iran is an inherent sponsor of terror across the Middle East. Peace out. Tom Brady, goat ring number 7.